So I want to go ahead and get into drawtogether.net and work on that tonight. However, before we do that, there is one little thing I cannot help but get into. And if you follow me on Twitter, you probably saw me bring this up yesterday. But I wanted to go ahead and bring it up because I've been working on a couple of different serverless projects for my company over the past 2 or 3 weeks. And I'm in the middle of a really big one right now. We're basically doing a whole bunch of API integration between our website and MailChimp, which is an email marketing service that we use. And so I've been doing a lot of serverless work using Pulumi and some of the stuff that we did in the first 2 episodes of our Twitch stream, actually. Well, this article broke my brain, which was basically advocating that local development for serverless applications is actually an anti-pattern. And I assume the entire point of this article was to troll people for clicks. Like, I assume this article was written with the express purpose of getting people on Hacker News and Reddit upset. That's the only reason why I can imagine someone would write this. But I'm going to go ahead and jump down to some of the juicy bits here. I'm going to argue that this absolute requirement to go ahead and get applications running locally on each developer's machine is not only unnecessary, but actually harmful in the serverless world. So, why is that? Well, basically, let me go ahead and scroll down here. He more or less argues that infrastructure for the web has gotten commoditized and that we're using regular sort of consumer systems, blah, blah, blah. The arguments, as I seem to recall, is that our local machines don't fully resemble what a production network system looks like because it doesn't account for, let's say, all of the real latencies that are involved, all of the other, let's say, dependencies on other cloud-hosted services you might use inside your applications. So, for instance, things like Azure Storage or making calls to third-party APIs or Azure Event Hubs or whatever else you might take a dependency on. And so, in order for every single developer to actually reproduce these types of environments locally, we need to go ahead and use something like containers, where we can go ahead and represent all of the different processes that are communicating back and forth with each other. We can go ahead and create local instances of our databases and all the other types of technology there. So, of course, if we go ahead and scroll down here, basically the premise is none of your local development even works because you don't factor in all these real world concerns. So basically we are essentially just testing its production. So why bother having a local development environment at all? Why not go ahead, if I scroll down here, why not just go ahead, actually let me scroll back up. Yeah, there we go. Why not go ahead and just deploy everything to a staging environment, do all of your development and testing against that, and not even bother doing local development? And of course, Gareth and his company are selling a product designed to help you do that. There wouldn't be much of a point to writing a controversial article like this if it wasn't trying to sell something. So, long story short, you end up optimizing for the wrong things. You end up not really testing your application for real when you develop locally, and you're better off just using a cloud-hosted environment to do all of your development. Now, the reason why I found this so insane, having just spent in the ballpark of about 8 or 9 hours today locally testing a serverless function that, in fact, does call third-party API. I don't really have much in the way of automated tests for this project yet. Mostly it's just me sitting there with the debugger. But by the way, something you can't use in the serverless paradigm that Gareth's recommending. But I was basically just sitting there with the debugger and some shell scripts that were basically helping me fire some realistic looking requests using curl and all that stuff. Long story short, this advice is insane. And the reason why is A, not every developer has gigabit internet, so they can't, go ahead and get low latency deployments. B, developer time is still the most expensive resource when it comes to developing software. And the reason why we want to have a local environment is the, build, deploy, test cycle should have as little latency as possible so the developer doesn't sit around waiting for stuff to do. Developers, in my opinion, aren't inherently good at multitasking. It's probably better for software developers to be able to narrowly focus on whatever the problem is right in front of them. Forcing them to go ahead and context switch while they're waiting for deployments and so forth is a surefire way to destroy productivity for a lot of software developers. So you're better off having a tight loop that gives feedback really quickly. But then on top of that, basically, if let's say Fastly goes down, which it did this week, and a part of your deployment pipeline is connected to that somehow, well, guess what? You're screwed. You can't test any of your software, period, because you don't have any ability to fall back and do this locally. So I basically think this article was probably largely written just to try to provoke a negative response out of people and draw traffic in that way and then sell a product. I'm becoming increasingly a bigger fan of serverless as I've started working with it. I can see some of the benefits of that now. And I've been someone who's been very skeptical of it for a long time. I can see some of the benefits of working with it from a cost point of view and from a developer experience point of view, but this is just terrible advice. Don't follow it. That being said, I will go ahead and drop a link to the article here. So if you want to go ahead and hate read it or sincerely engage with it, you can do that.